plant plants that absorb, that are drought resistant, fire resistant, and absorb lots of CO2.
And
We have been clawing back substantial amounts of water with the rebuild of the water system in the last 15 years or so.
And what I can add to on the question of just sort of zoning and density and resources is we've been working, of course, with Colin Innes, Director of Public Works, beginning, well over a year ago when we were looking at the sort of rezoning to allow for more laneway houses in the city and understanding those numbers. But also to Mr. Cormack's point, that there's sort of a gradual, subtle but steady decline of the number of people per dwelling unit per household across Canada, and that includes in the Kootenay region as well. To more and more larger houses where there used to be a family with 5 kids, and now it's 1 person or 2 people. There's more and more house share situations for sure, but on average, that density per dwelling unit is decreasing, which is certainly factors into how we look at dwelling unit increases in the city, right? Saying, well, okay, it's not necessarily more people if you're as of right allowing for a large 8,000 square foot home versus multiple smaller apartments. There's sort of statistics coming from Statistics Canada that kind of help us show that, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that many more people.
No, I mean it's this kind of development is really but I was interested with this one because it was and 4 or 5 people typically, and now having 15 people potentially living on that. So it's really good.
Hearing none.
Sorry, I just have a couple of questions. One is regarding in the communications with staff, the fact that because of the access, because I did go and drive, and you know what, I've been here that they need to put in the sprinkler system, and what I can't picture in my mind, and maybe you can walk me through it, the footpath access from Front Street to be secured via an easement. Who are we easing? The city?
No,
property, the neighbor's property?
We're easing actually the current property, right? So it's still undergoing subdivision. So there's this large lot. Put an easement on the new east lot. So the lot that contains the existing house, the house that's there right now. Because there's already a staircase going down from the property down to this Front Street staircase that goes down towards like Sutherland Financial down there.
Right.
So the easement would be once the line is in, the new lot with its new development wouldn't have direct access to those staircases without trespassing. So that's where the easement would go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then and that's because it's being stratted.
It's because it's being subdivided. Not stratted, yeah. Well, it's stratted as well too, but this is because of the subdivision.
So, and then I just have this one, I'm looking at this picture, and I apologize to everybody that's listening, but
yeah.
Where is that?
That's on, so that's Sutherland Financial property that's next door.
Right.
And so the applicant, owner of this lot and that lot, they are working together because they're also looking at doing a few things there on that property. So they've kind of meshed that together. It's unfortunate, in my opinion, for clarity's sake, that it's there, but yeah, in one day that's going to become a parking space because they're working together to kind of do some of this retaining work in collaboration with one another.
So I guess my question is where this picture is with this car with 4 what looks like parking spots, is that's the proponent's property, or is that somebody else's property?
That's someone else's property.
And the proponent would actually have to negotiate the purchase of this land?
No.
Parking?
So,
or that's just a...
Actually has nothing to do with this development. That the parking for this development is exactly as Councillor Anderson showing. It's on that lot and further east from there.
Okay,
it's just kind of a...
Parking is such a contentious thing in Nelson, as you know.
Yeah.
I was sort of thinking, oh, and he's just borrowed 40 feet of the neighbor's yard to put in 4 more parking spots, so.
It's Wild
Yes,
West.
it is a very unfortunate diagram, because
Yeah.
it kind of took my breath away when I looked at it, so. Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Through the mayor. So then, my understanding is this is going. So the existing house is going to be subdivided from the new build, but then the
Correct.
houses- Okay.
And that'll be secured by a covenant.
Okay.
Yeah, so, once the subdivision, happens, right, and that's kind of almost independent of this process, right, the variance. So the few of the conditions then is that there's going to be that footpath easement that goes north towards the front street staircase there. There's also that sort of dotted line there because the new development would require a footpath going south on the lot that belongs to the existing house, and then finally a covenant securing in perpetuity those 3 parking spaces for the new development.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Councillor Page.
Sorry, Mayor. Through the chair, so if I'm to understand this correctly, that house itself, because I don't see anything in the plan that the existing house will actually have a parking spot set aside for it, if all 3 of them are now allocated to the
And
fourplex.
just as you're saying that, I realized so it's not those. It's actually only 2 spaces on the lot there. It's 1 space. The requirement in the bylaw is for 1 space per dwelling unit. So there's 2 spaces on the lot, on the west lot, 2 spaces on the east lot. Yeah, and then 1. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
We move
Okay,
the
so
motion.
we're on the first one, which is the maximum lot coverage. All in favor? Carried. I need a mover and seconder for number 2 to vary the side setback. Councillor Lochtenberg, Councillor Page. Questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. And number 3, waive the height envelope requirements. Councillor Page and Councillor Morris.
And I have a question.
You have a question? Go ahead.
So just in terms of that, I realized that, at one point you said that they're within the height envelope, and then now we're actually having to do a height envelope sort of adjustment because of the fact that they're going into butterflies, but they're more or less flat by the looks of the drawings. Was there any concern about the shadow cast of getting rid of the peak or the vault or the?
There wasn't an analysis for that. So the analysis kind of concerning then the height envelope is that sort of as part of the developer's sort of work in collaboration with the property owner to the west, that owner is going to be putting on a 1 meter wide no build covenant, which essentially keeps the same or sort of extends the gap between any future buildings to the point where we wouldn't require that height envelope restriction design at any rate, and secondly then as well too, providing the possibility of having the flat roof in order for those rooftop amenities, the outdoor space that's required by the bylaw. Actually, each dwelling unit has to have a certain amount of amenity area, and then the green roof option as well too.
Thanks.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Onward and upward. The next item on the agenda is the proclamation policy. Staff is recommending the proclamation.
No.
Oh, sorry.
706 Herridge.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. 706 Herridge. Redesignate 706 Herridge Lane from multi-use residential to mixed-use core in the official community plan, and rezone the property from R3 downtown residential to new zone MU downtown mixed use. The purpose of the application is to rehabilitate and convert an existing building into 8 micro suites with 1 commercial unit at grade on Herridge Lane. The application requires amendment of the zoning bylaw and the OCP bylaw and the off-street parking and landscape bylaw. And this project was vetted with the APC and approved, and it's moved now forward to council. And we had the public hearing earlier, and it's forwarded to council now for your recommendations. And there's 5 recommendations on our list. Council has the option, of course, to approve or deny these projects or amendments. Councillor Morrison, are you moving?
I'm just looking in terms of, would like some direction from staff in terms what's allowed within the new MU6. I'm just looking at zoning is like item 3 here. I don't wanna be passing 1 and 2 before, like, would we not wanna change the list of, things that could be considered within that zoning if we wanted to?
On the offer that Thomas made tonight in the public
Well, and
hearing.
I just sort of think, just listening to the, I would like to move not even his offer, but just listening to the concerns of the neighborhood about striking from the list of options, pub and or craft brewery. From that, so I'm sort of thinking that we'd have to maybe pass the zoning amendment first and then the OCP. Like, I'm just concerned about the order that we do these in to make sure that we capture. I don't want the OCP to pass without the
zoning done first. So you would do the zoning first, you could make the amendment before you pass third reading. Okay, and we would put the language in there on the condition of. Alex can help us with that, and then you can adopt it, and we'll do the zoning first, and then we'll do the OCP.
Okay, then I would like to go ahead then and move number 3
I'll second it.
with the changes as,
Sorry, Councillor Morrison.
sorry?
Yeah, I think process-wise, the OCP has to allow this use before we can, so I don't think the use is.
Does it make?
Does it speak to it though in the OCP?
The OCP is about the density, right?
Yeah, the OCP, so the change then is to go from residential to mixed use. So mixed use is independent of whether there's an alcohol facility or not.
So.
Which one are you recommending, Alex, then we start with?
I think it would probably zoning, so to work through that, and then go to the OCP, and then go to adoption of the zoning.
So we go to number 3 then?
We'll go to number 3.
Back to number
3,
1.
1, 2, 4.
Yeah. Okay. So, so I've moved it and Councillor Anderson seconded it, and so it's regarding the striking pub and craft brewery from the list of usable uses.
No commercial uses.
Yeah, commercial uses, sorry.
Okay,
Excuse me, I think it was pub or craft brewery and distillery.
just a
Oh, and
moment.
distillery. So just so it's the right, like, I don't know exactly what the right.
So there is a
words are.
list, hold on.
Yeah, where's the
Well, let's
list?
find the list here, it's in your
Yeah.
package.
So the two uses then are E, A, B, C, D, E, which is craft brewery distillery, and then P for neighborhood pub.
So you,
That should be in the resolution.
so that needs to be in there, so your number E and
And P.
Seconder?
Yeah.
that. Councillor Morrison, you got that? Because it's
Yep.
gonna be your motion.
Yep, thanks. Councillor Anderson's gonna wear it too.
Yeah. Okay. Any further questions or comments? And we're dealing with the zoning amendment bylaw. We read it third time. All in favor with the amendment? The official community plan, we need to move her. Moved by Councillor Lochtenberg, second by Councillor Page. Any questions or comments on this one? Councillor Woodward?
So from my notes from what the public spoke about, so they were mainly concerned with what we dealt with here,
Yeah.
which is good.
So
The
this
other,
is the OCP. you're
that's the
talking about
OCP, which we
This is
just dealt
OCP.
with. Yep.
now. No, that was zoning you dealt with.
We dealt with zoning.
Okay.
This is OCP.
This is
OCP is
OCP.
more around
Uh-huh.
density, or the mixed use commercial.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we go to 4 in zoning, I'll ask then.
Okay, we'll give you a call.
Thanks.
All right, any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? That's 1, we're heading to 4 now, right?
No, we're doing
Two.
2.
2, okay. Number 2, the official community plan amendment number 3462, 2019 be finally adopted. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Lochtenberg, Councillor Anderson, all in favor? Thank you. heading for 4. Zoning amendment bylaw number 3463, 2019 be finally adopted. So if you want, something you wanted to question there, you can move it with.
Move it to question it.
I'll wait till number 5.
Okay. You need a mover and a seconder though. Councillor Morrison and Councillor Page, questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. Number 5, off-street parking and landscape amendment bylaw number 3464, 2019 be finally adopted. That's what's in front of you, but you can adjust that if you wish. Councillor Woodward, second by Councillor Anderson.
So through the chair, so the notes that I got here, really the key pieces were worry about neighborhood changes with a pub, and that's been dealt with. And the other key piece was parking. So what we heard from the builder was that it was going to be essentially up to, it was his discretion of who he brought in, whether or not they would have a car. So he would, it sounded like he was saying he, as a landlord, would tend towards people without cars. You know, that may not hold over the long haul.
That could be a tough one.
That could be a tough one. So what does concern me is that at some point in the future, maybe he'll sell it or what have you, and then you'll just have 8 people living in there. So I'm just wondering about that.
I think that would be a really difficult one for us to police. You control the number of parking permits, but for us to figure out if a tenant has a car or not would be something that we're not doing.
Sure.
We also have a parking strategy that we're bringing forward. I think you're in the position of, are you going to take some risks to encourage different type of changes in parking and see how that plays out? That's kind of what we're recommending in this particular development, is that, are you gonna, try a new course and see if building that type of unit in the downtown core leads to people less car dependent. Mm-hmm. That's really what you're doing. If you don't feel kind of back to the drawing board a little bit, but I think that's what we're the pieces that your staff have negotiated with the car share and these things. I guess we're feeling that's a reasonable assurance that you're going to kind of start to make that shift, and that's really what you're.
And I'd also, from a planning perspective, just sort of looking at, not in every instance 100% of the time, but a bit of a decoupling from, dwelling units, equals, a car, and one dwelling unit equals one person, right? One of the, issues, so to say, that came out, a lot through the public consultation earlier this year around the parking strategy was, currently we we limit it to 1 parking permit per dwelling unit. More and more we have these single family homes and duplexes that are house shares, right? Where you have 2, 3, 4, 6, God forbid 8, which would actually be against the zoning bylaw. Adults who are sharing 1 dwelling unit, and they have sort of the same issue, right? So as of right, I think by the zoning bylaw you could have like 5 or 6 adults in 1 dwelling unit. So let's assume that number then. But it's again only 1 dwelling unit, only 1 parking pass. So we're sort of contending with the same thing right now as well too, where people are, enforcement is important on this, where people are kind of playing parking games and stuff, because indeed there are 5, 6 adults in 1 house, and 3 of them have a car.
Yeah. So just for clarification, so right now, out there in Nelson, we do have homes, 5 or 6 people living in there, 4 cars already. Every day they come home, they're trying to figure out where they're going to park. That's already a more organized situation.
It's a bit more organized, so to say. Again, I guess my caution would be, so firstly, as of right, they would, it's the R3 zone, right, without coming to council, there is the option for sort of unlimited unlimited density fitting in with the kind of that existing building there. So, and you know, if they had only gone for 3 units, you know, at something like 800 to 1,000 square feet each, you'd still have, you know, the theoretical possibility of, you know, having 2 3-bedroom units that are going to be split by 2, you know, unrelated adults, and you're still going to have, you know, 4 or 5 cars potentially, right? You know, from our staff's perspective, there isn't that much certainty that this means more people, that 8 small units means more people than 3 or 4 larger units.
Okay, thank
I
you.
think when you look at this project and the state of the existing building
Mm-hmm.
on that property going forward, some of these changes to parking, et cetera, are going to be the only way you're going to stimulate development
For sure.
of some of these older properties that can nowadays be developed.
Right.
Because of the type of equipment we have and so forth. Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the part of the plan I thought was brilliant was the membership to the car share co-op. But what protection do we have with, say, a subsequent owner to follow through with that?
Mm-hmm.
The subsequent owner could come in and say, yeah, I'm not paying for that. Can we put a covenant on title that subsequent owners have to follow through with that?
That would certainly be a possibility. That wasn't included in the sort of original resolution that was passed last month. But it's absolutely possible to do something like that.
Is that what you want?
That's exactly what I was after, yes.
So
Thank
you
you.
you have to make that clear. So
Okay, so how do we, can we at this point amend that?
Or it could either be amended last month, or it could just be an additional resolution, subject, you know, referring to this resolution, and that, you know, would be a covenant instead of
That
just.
commitment has been made.
Mhm.
This is just formalizing it in the document, right?
So if you wish to make we can pass this and you can make
Yeah.
that motion after
Okay.
if you wish. Okay, so you can run it around your head. That's coming from an old car dealer. Program.
The sunset industry.
Living too long at Queen's Bay or something? What's going on?
That nature's getting to you.
Okay, so any further comments on number 5? Hearing none. All in favor? All right, Councillor
Cal.
Renwick, you're up.
So I would like to bring forward a resolution that, I guess it would be number 6, that we, I'm going to say this, that a covenant shall be placed on title stating that any subsequent owners of 706 Herridge Lane must provide the memberships into the Nelson Car Share Co-op or similar service available at that time.
The language that's used in the off-street parking bylaw is an established car share organization.
There you go. Thank you.
I don't think you need subsequent. You're just going to register it on titles.
Okay.
They would
Okay.
have the obligation just as, because right now it's a promise.
Okay, yeah.
Well, second for discussion.
You're seconding?
Second for discussion.
Page is second, so are the conversations on?
Do you want to speak to it?
You okay?
No, I'm good.
Councillor Lockenberg?
I would,
Well, I want to speak to it.
Oh, you're welcome to.
No, sorry.
Absolutely.
I was deferring to Cal. Through the
Turn
chair.
this way if you want to speak to me, don't turn that way.
Sure. I'd speak actually against it. It seems like going forward and thinking what might exist or what membership fees may change. I worry about encumbering future titles with this in perpetuity. Like I would be a bit concerned about this being such a new thing of registering on covenant, and maybe the co-op changes, maybe the environment in a decade is completely different, but this
So it's
Might be a way to fix that, though.
yeah, so it's council's covenant, and council always has the
Ability to undo it.
opportunity to change that covenant. So it's in your favor. So future council, if something changed, you could remove that from title.
So you can't fetter future councils, or even this one for that matter, if you decided in the
Yeah.
future.
So, yeah, so there's a relatively easy mechanism. Someone would come back to council and say, there's no car share co-ops
Right.
anymore, and there's no cars anymore, and we don't need that on our tax,
Society collapse, there's no cars, okay.
right?
Yeah, looking forward to that deal.
Okay,
There's a reasonable way to-
that was my concern.
yeah.
Magic carpets or something. Okay, you're fine with that then?
Yeah,
Councillor
that's
Lockenberg,
what
did you want to
No,
throw your
that,
two cents worth?
that addressed it, and I'm satisfied.
Okay, so we're clear on what we're doing here.
Yeah.
That's the resolution of Councillor Renwick. All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much.
Nice.
All right. That was the last one on that page, folks. Thanks very much. Good questions. And we had for those of you who weren't here, we had the public hearing earlier, and this is the outcome of the information we got, feedback we got from the public. So sometimes the public hearings actually work. And now we're moving on to the banner proclamation. Staff is recommending the proclamation policy be amended to extend to flags and banners in addition to policy. And there's a background information as usual, and there is a recommendation that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Proclamation Policy 0630000005 as amended on September the 3rd, 2019 to include flags and banners be retitled as a proclamation, flags and banners be adopted.
I'll move that.
Second
Moved by
it.
Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Anderson. Questions or comments? Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, so I'd like to speak against this motion. You know, many of us were at Pride on the weekend, and I think we see how important it is for us to be able to do things like put up the gay and trans flags and have those hung over our city. You know, I do think that there's a way that we can you know, find a creative solution for these things. So one of the things that I have come up with would be the idea, and my intention is to have as little staff time as possible and it to be on the shoulders of council to make decisions regarding this. So it would be a simple application form. It would have to be, before it comes to staff, it would have to be endorsed by 2 councillors or, of course, mayor and a councillor. The application would have information similar to the previous application where, you know, you needed a description of the group, the dates that they would like the banner or the flag hung, and then also the design of the banner or the flag. The application fee would apply.
Councillor Anderson, I'm going to
Yes.
ask you at this point, because now you're talking about the
Process?
reason why you want to support the, you're going to make a
Yes.
motion, right?
Okay.
Clearly?
Yes, I will make a motion.
So you seconded the one that's on the table.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm asking us, I guess I'm just quickly going through what I would like to see. And then, because I'm going to, I think that we should think about this a little bit differently. And that instead of adopting the policy that has been provided to us, that we find a different way to allow these groups. Otherwise, we'll never see the Pride or the Trans or the Métis flag fly across our city again. And this gives, you know, instead of us having staff time and staff having to process these applications, it would come directly to council, and it would be up to council to make a decision regarding any flags and banners. So I propose that we vote against this motion, and then I'll make another recommendation.
Okay, any further comments?
Can I have
Councillor Woodward.
Just wanted some clarification. So essentially what we're doing, or what you're asking for, is to relieve staff of the responsibility of making a decision about flags and banners and putting that onto council's just table. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Thank you.
So can I just, in terms of this, is really a housekeeping, because you don't have a policy around flags and banners anymore. So in the interim, until that happened, right now, if someone wanted to bring this forward to council, then we would have to bring this forward to council because you have no policy around it. So I would suggest you clean up where you are right now, and if you want to revisit a flag and banner policy, you can do that, right? We're just in this limbo land of having, we don't have a policy, and we don't have a policy that says we don't bring those forward to council. So if you want to clean that up for now, and if council wants to revisit the banner and flag policy, you could do that separately, because you've removed the one that you had. So there's, and it wasn't. So
Yeah.
now we're going to have. So in the interim, we would have to take every one of these to council.
Perfect.
If the ones that people were concerned about, we'd have to bring that to council for
Yeah,
you to make
that's
a decision
appropriate.
on.
Can I speak to that then?
If that's clarification.
And any application that comes in, it sounds like it has to come to council now. So I would like to see us defeat the motion and make a new motion for council to take the burden off of staff and put it onto council.
Just a moment. Go ahead, Councillor Morrison.
So I need a point of clarification here, because we got rid of the policy.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that says that it comes to council, or, am I completely wrong?
No.
No, someone can make a request to council that you consider whatever. Right now, we've said what won't come to council is proclamations.
Right. Did we not have a vote about
Yeah.
banners, and that we weren't gonna have them anymore after the end of this
You
year?
removed your policy, that's why I'm saying this was housekeeping from our end, because you removed your policy and we're in this limbo land. What if someone asked and we have nothing that says you can't bring this forward? So this, like proclamation, says you can't bring those forward. Banners or flags, you'd develop a new policy, and that would now rule.
So we asked for this in the first place.
John, over here.
Councillor Renwick, then Councillor Page, and then Councillor.
No, I'm sorry. I've just looked at this as just housekeeping for Sarah and her group at the front a little bit, and because we defeated this in May, I think it was, when we went round the table, and yeah, I suppose we would have to come up with a new policy if that's the wish of the council.
Councillor Page.
I'd like to offer an alternative that I think makes a lot of sense, because I think the thing that's been contentious about this whole thing is the banner and not the flag. And so I would be inclined to put the banners on here and say we do not do banners, and a solution like Councillor Anderson has put forward for flags, have the flags come to us and have a discussion about whether we want to put that flag up or not on those dates, and let the banners be denied underneath the proclamation policy. So I would move that we amend this resolution to remove the words flag from it, with the understanding that Councillor Anderson would bring forward a new resolution after we voted on that.
Yes, I can.
You need a second.
Can I have some clarification?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, fair enough. This is exactly why we're here today.
Okay.
Keep
So,
this in mind, anybody can make a flag going forward. I
Yeah.
remember that.
so a lot of debate to get to the point where we said no to flags and banners for the city, because we didn't want to get involved in societal choices. I'm not sure if that's the right word. So by stepping back to a different policy, we're putting the responsibility of what we think should be flown and should not be flown. So it becomes a decision of ours. And I think we were trying to remove ourselves from that, because it muddies the water, because then it becomes up to us who decides gets what. Now, I have heard other councillors say, well, we do that all the time, right? We decide, and we've done a bunch tonight. This person gets that person doesn't get that. So we do that. But I just want to be very cautious moving forward that we don't find ourselves in exactly the same position we were before.
That's exactly what.
So I just want to be careful about where we're moving here, because if we get back to the exact place where we were before, we're going to have the exact same problems where people are going to come to us maybe as a council, we don't agree with that and we say no, and then all of a sudden we're in these muddy waters. So I just putting it out there. I just really don't want to end up where we were before, because we worked very hard to get to this point. And so I just want to be careful moving forward. That's all.
Is there a seconder? Yes, a second. On the amendment.
Yeah, does anyone want to second my amendment?
I have a point of clarification.
Oh, he asked for some clarification. That's
Yep.
just one.
And
And I just want some
Second is a mo- is
Not
an
yet. I want a point of clarification too. Just
Okay.
Because what CAO was saying was that this was cleanup, and I want to understand the cleanup part, because what Councillor Anderson's proposing, it seems to make sense that you would pass this. So
It's just the interim step. Right?
yeah, it's just the step to get to what you're going to do right away. So unless I'm missing something, but it seems to me that you pass it and then you go to.
So basically what would happen until council chose to have a new policy, you wouldn't consider any applications at this stage until a new policy was set.
Yeah, which would literally be 30 seconds.
So this was.
No, because a new policy, may I clarify it? So a new policy would have to be put in place. That would mean if it takes staff 2 years to come up with a policy that we agree on, it means that no banner nor no flag would be flown. So if we defeat the motion now, it means when it comes to staff, then they have to come to us because there is no policy that guides them.
Except that you can propose the policy right now.
Except I can propose for staff to go start to write a policy. A policy can't be written in a motion.
Right. Okay.
Which is why, sorry, John.
Okay.
Which is why I would put it to take the flag part out, put the banner part in, let that go forward, and then propose a policy for the flag. And so it's not, they wouldn't be banned, and they don't have iconography on it, and they don't have text on them.
So
Okay, I'll second
I think
that.
it's really important that, Council, I think it's important that we realize how we got here. And we requested what's here today, right? And
I wasn't
secondly-
in the room, so
No,
yeah.
that's fine. But there was enough other people. So we wanted to scrap entirely flags and banners from, that was our intention. And part of the reason was because we didn't want the responsibility of deciding who was in and who was out. And basically what we're really doing now is we're saying, let's defeat this and go back to doing what we were doing before. Because that's really what's going to happen. Because believe me, no, just a second, let me finish, please. So if you have a pride flag outside, there's absolutely nothing preventing the Right to Life group making their flag and bringing it forward, and you have flags now in your policy.
There's a
Now you're going to decide again. You're going to do exactly what we were trying not to do in May. You're going to go back to doing that again because somebody shows up with a flag that we've decided doesn't fit what we want to represent.
there's a key difference from the policy that was in place and from a new policy that I'm proposing. The policy that was in place, it was automatically that as long as it fit the criteria, it went up. It never came to the council table. There was never a decision by council. What I'm proposing is that every banner, I'm happy to have the flag be a part of, or to have this be removed. I think the flags, at least now, should come to council and we can approve them. It can be within our, it's we were literally making decisions that change people's lives every day. I think that we can bear this responsibility of if a flag is able to go up or not. So I would like to second Councillor Page's motion.
Which is repeated again. So make sure Sarah's got it.
So the amendment is to remove the word flags from the resolution and to include banners to be retitled.
And did you want to include that flags come back to council to make that decision?
She's gonna have to make it
You're gonna make
another
a separate
motion.
Make another motion after.
Yeah.
So do you want to vote on the amendment?
So we have a mover and a seconder, so you want to speak to the amendment?
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. Just to clarify something you said earlier, Mayor, the will of council wasn't so much to, or the reasoning and the rationale that sort of came out of that in my memory wasn't so much that we were trying to sort of take this off our plate and say we don't want to deal with it. Some of us were saying that this is something that council should be dealing with and not having staff deal with it. So taking it off of staff and putting it onto council, but then there was some confusion about how does the mechanics of that actually work. I personally think this is the kind of thing that councils are for, that these are the decisions we make. And I think to speak to Councillor Anderson's proposal, having two councillors have to endorse any application before anybody sees the light of day, before council sees it, before anybody sees it, seems to make a lot of sense, particularly because as a council moving forward, when we're trying to set a direction for the city, sometimes we work through community groups. So we are sort of promoting community groups all the time. This is just one other channel that we choose to use. So I think it's a smart proposal. The only confusion I guess I have here is, again, related to this policy here. What I'm understanding is that if we pass this, staff will say that council has a policy, so we'll reject outright. Could we not make this a modification? So amend this, banners or not, banners, flags, we can contain that, but couldn't we just say what Councillor Anderson is proposing? Just, you need to get two councillors to endorse it.
I would suggest you don't start writing policy at a council meeting.
But that's kind of what we're doing by making these modifications, though, aren't we?
No, there's a policy here. You're amending a policy, not writing a new policy. We do not have a policy on banners and
Right.
flags right now.
So in this policy here, amending this policy, we would say the policy is for staff to say we don't accept, staff does not process or approve flags or resolutions. You have to go get two councillors to endorse it, and then it's done. Like, is that not?
Not if it's coming back to this table, because you only have two and then you have four others sitting here.
Is there a cost to this? Is there, there's a whole bunch of things that go into a policy.
I guess I'm just going off of what we already have and then modifying it, but okay, that's fine.
I think there's nothing wrong with what you're putting forward, but I think the best way to deal with it is deal with it in the proper process and take time to do it.
Yeah, and I think we want to do some research.
And do it right,
Because two councillors have no individual authority.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
And we're still on an amendment, so maybe we want to finish the amendment and then have a whole debate about the.
Yeah.
Okay. And the amendment reads, Sarah,
The proposed,
can you use the microphone, please?
that the proposed Corporation of the City of Nelson Proclamation Policy 0630000005, as amended on September 3rd, 2019, includes banners and not flags in the proclamation, to be retitled as Proclamations and Banners Policy be adopted. Something along those lines.
That's something.
No.
Sorry, can you just read the bottom part again? I just wanted to make sure that that's just the last.
To include banners and not flags, and to be retitled as Proclamations and Banners, rather than Proclamations, Flags, and Banners. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody's clear?
No.
Okay. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Carry.
I wish to be recorded.
You want to be recorded opposed?
piece, do you want a resolution to develop a new policy on?
Why don't we wait until we do some strategic planning? Because I know that staff time is very limited, and so with something like this, I'm satisfied with where it is right now, and I think we can bring this forward during our strategic planning session that's going to happen.
Council's happy with
When are we
these
having a
just coming to
strategic
council?
planning session?
Well, we'll have to have one for next year's priorities.
So just for clarification then, so we are now, once again, sitting without any policy about flags.
Banners. We have a flag.
No, we don't have a flags.
Sorry, flags. Yes,
We have no
exactly.
policy now about
passed a-
flags.
Yeah,
Because we didn't put it into this.
correct.
So I want to hang the Janice Morrison flag.
This is my point.
Now, what am I doing.
You will ask for that to come to council, and we'll write a staff report, and I guess, and without policy, and you'll vote.
So each one will come as a staff report then at this junction.
I'd like to move that we, I don't know, adjust or adapt the flag policy so that in the case of the flags, that somebody coming forward doesn't come directly to council, gets 2 councillors to endorse before coming to council. If they can't get it, then it just doesn't.
I think we have to let staff take a look at that, because that's a bit on the orthodox how you do that. So you have 2 councillors, potentially the mayor sitting out there deciding, and then you bring it back here, and you have a whole other discussion again. So
The reason why I thought that was a brilliant idea was because if somebody comes before council and presents it to the whole council, it'll have to get a mover and a seconder anyways. So that's kind of saving everybody's time, finding your mover and seconder to support your.
How is that different than a variance coming forward, and you're gonna get 2 councillors to approve a variance before it comes to council?
So,
I just think it's,
Councillor Morris,
just let us do some work.
Yeah,
If council wants us to look at a new policy on it, we can do that.
But the
I think we
alternative.
just have to do some.
Come to council.
yeah, which is kind of
Yeah.
what Councillor Anderson is sort of proposing as
Yeah.
what's going to happen anyways. She wants everyone to come to council for debate, because I can tell you this, is that if somebody stopped me on the street tomorrow to sign, except if it was some, particularly hate-driven agenda, I would sign to allow their request to come to council to be debated. And so the question here really is, we may with a new policy somehow exclude staff. I don't think that that's really totally a possibility in terms of time. It still has to get on the docket to some extent. But we will be spending a lot of time having debates very similar to the debate that I have to say was very emotional for some councillors around this table. And we will be facing that potentially numerous times into the future as we debate every organization that wants to have a flag, because every organization can make a flag as much as they want to make a banner. So this is just, in my mind, a cautionary tale of how much time do we want to spend having these debates on a fairly, I would say, regular basis. That's really my concern about the value of time. Yes, I hear we make decisions that affect people's lives every day. Somebody pointed out that we made some decisions about that already today. I'm not too sure that spending a significant amount of time doing flags and banners. Again, this debate has almost taken us now this evening more than 2 major, we've amended the OCP in less time than we've been able to decide flag versus banner, in, out, and what it's going to look like and how we're going to deal with everyone that comes forward over the next at least 3 years while this council continues to sit.
take it out of the political forum and you're just throwing it right back in.
It's right back in there.
Well, the flags and banners do take this amount of time because they're representative of something much bigger. We have received probably no more issue has drawn more attention, more emails, more responses than this. So it makes sense that we spend time, as much time maybe as needed to come up with a solution that works for everybody. I do want to say that let's experiment with how we have everything come forward to council, see how that goes. We may not want to wait till the strat plan, maybe we will, but I do.
In the meantime, they're going to come to council. That's what we've done here. They are going to come to council.
I understand.
Policy
And I
or
guess-
no policy.
I guess we'll see how it goes, and then in a future, maybe in October, we'll be like, whoa, that's too many, so let's do this. 2 councillors to endorse. And again, they have our email. They can send an email. Staff can just be like, forward to council@nelson.ca, and if you get 2 people respond, then we'll look at it. Otherwise, don't bother us.
That's,
We can't.
I mean, we're stepping
Can't do that.
outside, we're stepping outside completely
Can't do
of
that.
our responsibility and governance. That's way over, that's like a special interest group can get a hold of 2 councillors and decide what they want to do.
No, but it would always come to the council table.
Gatekeeper getting it to council.
Yeah.
Like, is it
You don't have that.
No, you don't
have
have
that
that
authority.
ability.
That's the thing, is it always has to come to council.
I'm actually gonna leave this subject for now, because again, we've actually tainted the subject, and I think it's important that we get together and we have a conversation with staff and see what this would look like from their ability to manage it and our governance responsibility to our community overall. So let's take it from there. In the meantime, be ready for a few flag proposals to come forward. All right, onward and upward. Proclamation. So the letter of support policy, we get these requests on a number of occasions. Staff is recommending that a letter of support policy be adopted in order to streamline how requests for such letters are processed by the city. Council is requested to pass a resolution adopting a policy. And council will know why, because many people just show up and want a letter of support. And when we put our name on a letter to a particular group, we have to be sure that we understand where it's going and how it's going to generate prosperity and moving groups forward in our community. So I think it's important we deal with this and have this policy around letters of support. Otherwise, it just doesn't work very well. So there is a recommendation there, and there is some out of a preamble letting you know why we're at this point, and I'm sure everybody's read it. So if there's a councillor that wishes to move the resolution that the Corporation of the City of Nelson support policy number 0550-00017 be adopted. It was moved by Councillor Page. We need a seconder. Councillor Morrison. Questions or comments?
I have a question.
Question from the mover.
Yeah,
Question from Councillor Anderson.
I think it's I think I understood in the package, but I wanted clarification. We would see both all the letters that were sent in for request and whether or not they had been accepted or denied. So every couple meetings, we would just see what was sent through, and it would be in our package as a report. Okay, that was it.
Again, this idea is actually to save council some time to, if we can approve those based on this criteria, then we don't have to write RFDs for these and have that discussion around the council table.
So we'd see both accepted and the rejected requests.
Well, if it doesn't fit your policy, they would still have the right for you to consider it, right?
Okay. Yeah, that was.
So these are the ones that staff would be able to approve at our level, and if it doesn't fit this criteria, for example, that third bullet we added, if we think it's a competing grant against something that we're going to apply for, we would bring that forward, and you may say, that's fine, it can compete, we still think this is important, we want to, still write a letter of support for this group.
Okay. That was it.
Good question. Yeah, just to staff. So, I mean, I think that there's definitely protection within this policy, considering it's a local nonprofit. So there's a, that you're holding. By some people as controversial, and how that would be dealt with.
By some people as controversial?
Yeah, I mean, there could be, for instance, say there was a nonprofit that was looking for a letter of support and they were anti-logging and they didn't want logging to be happening in a certain area and they did have nonprofit status. Would the City of Nelson then have our name on a letter that was going against a local logging company, for instance? I'm just trying to get clarification around that.
Yeah, I think we'd use our discretion on that if we felt it was something that was controversial, then we probably would bring it forward.
So that's not just as a supplementary, so that's not addressed within the policy at all. So I would like to propose that we refer this back to staff and to have anything controversial be somehow addressed within this policy. I just see that there could be, within the policy, if we fit those three criteria, but if it's something that, it could, I just don't want staff to have to sort of question that, and it's not within the policy, and what is coming forward and what's not coming forward.
Yeah, I think that one's going to be a little challenging to. Now we'd have to decide what we think is controversial and non-controversial, which we will, but I don't know how you necessarily define it in policy.
If I may, If my understanding is correct, the criteria is as simple as it is and clear as it is. Staff would go through, execute, whatever did fit the criteria would come to us anyway. And so if staff was a little bit aggressive in saying no to things, then we would just get a bigger package of letters requesting our decision. If they're heavy-handed in the rejection side of things, then we just see those.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's addressed in the,
that package,
it's
so.
addressed in the benefits and disadvantages and negative impacts there. If you read through that piece, it covers exactly what you're saying. I think it does anyway, Councillor Anderson, but you can correct me if you wish. Council decisions, council will be regularly appraised of any organizations that, apply for their support.
I think, may I just add for clarification that, so many of the letters we get are just local groups, need some help to access funds, boom, no problem. But I think there's a difference is if one group is against something and they want the city to support that sentiment.
Or for something.
Or for something and to support that. I mean, that's kind of maybe not the place for staff to make that decision. That's actually really the place for council who was voted in by the public, and that's what, we're representing that the public in general and what we support. So I think there is something to be considered here of how much responsibility, kind of like the banner flag thing, is being put on staff to make those decisions rather than council.
That's a good point.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things, this is for grant or funding requests, right? So some agency out there has to have a program that they're applying under, which will have a whole set of criteria of what that is. So I think just our history, we haven't seen sort of necessarily controversial ones, right, because the funding pots don't sort of align with that. So I think there's some built-in checks and balances. We're not talking about letters of support for someone's position on something. We're talking strictly granting funding applications.
And it does allow for, as an example, we often get letters where a group would, as an example, it could be the Pilots Association, see some of them sitting here tonight might discover there's a grant available and have a 2-week window to sort of apply for it, and if they have to wait for a council meeting to make it happen, it just doesn't happen. Right? So, and that's covered in the benefits and disadvantages and negative impacts statement there as well. So it allows staff to take a look at that and say, yeah, this would work, and they can say, yes, we'll write this letter of support.
Yeah, I think 98% of the time it's just going to be very simple, straightforward. But I do think there has to be that definitely that ability for staff to be like, yeah, this is a little bit controversial. Council should look after this.
Yep. Yeah, and like I said, I think.
Yeah.
Filter that in it themselves.
So we have a mover and a seconder, right? And all in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. And the next one is an encroachment, and this is a bit of something similar actually to what we just dealt with. It's a bit of a housekeeping thing as well. It does give staff the ability to sort of look at these particular projects that are, well, there's not a variance required, but there is encroachment, etc. So staff is recommending that the encroachment policy be amended to provide that the city may pursue existing non-conforming encroachments on city lands by requiring that they be recorded and titled, and that the encroachment agreement be entered into. Council is requested to pass the resolution to adopt the proposed amendment policy. And once again, there's a good report attached to this here for Council's consideration. However, there is a recommendation, and if somebody wishes to move it, I'm more than happy to read it out. Moved by Councillor Lochtenberg that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Encroachment Policy 2360-00010 as amended on September the 3rd, 2019 to remove language regarding non-conforming encroachment be adopted. So seconder, please. Councillor Woodward. Any questions or comments? Okay with that? All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. The next next item on the agenda, folks, is the downtown street decorative lighting. Development Service is proposing to extend the downtown decorative lighting project within the downtown and is seeking council decision to which areas should be prioritized for 2019. And you can see there the preamble to this as well. Very positive feedback and quite a comprehensive report as to next stages of moving this project forward. And there is a recommendation for council's consideration, and there's actually two of them. And if we have a mover and a seconder, then we'll have a conversation or move on. Moved by Councillor Lochtenberg, second by Councillor Page, that the council approve the decorative lighting project and direct staff to complete the installation of lighting on Baker Street within the 2019 allocated budget, including an allocation of $8,000 from the Downtown Waterfront Reserve Fund and $6,000 from the Spurway Trust Fund. Kevin, do you want to give us any, you want to give the public a bit of feedback on what these two funds are about and why would we use those?
Sure. So the Downtown Waterfront Reserve Fund was really created when we briefly had HST that put additional tax on our parking meters that we had to send to the province. When they went back to GST, PST, now we only pay on GST and not PST, so that created this amount that we should invest that back into our downtown waterfront plan. There was, basically money that was coming back to us that we were sending to the government. So we've been using that for things like the International Mural Festival, the sculptures, downtown washroom, all those type of projects they've been used for. And I think last year, the lighting, we used some of that. So that's kind of our main. So basically the PST portion of that, was it 7% at the time, I think? We use 7% of the parking meter revenues that we receive, and that goes into this fund, and it's used for those things. So this is a downtown improvement. Makes sense that we use that fund. The Spurway Trust was specifically amount of money that was donated to the city for enhancements of lighting and I think decorative things in our downtown. What's available in that fund is only the interest component on that donation. It's not a large amount now. I did check with the deputy CFO. This one-time funding is $6,000, and then sort of ongoing, we're earning about $1,800 a year. So that's basically all that it can support going forward. And so those are the two funds. And the other thing that we provided you was because these lights only have a lifespan of about 3 full years, because they're on basically 24/7, or at least in the evening, and obviously at this time of year they're on for quite a bit of time. That and these are the best lighting that we can find out there. So we basically have a 4-year replacement cycle. We'll see how that looks, but that's what happened previously when we had downtown lighting. Is we didn't account for the replacement that we needed to, we just kept adding, and then all of a sudden go, oh, now these are all starting to fail and we have no money to replace these ones that are failing. So that's why we put in that spreadsheet to show you, basically what we can support with this current level of funding. And that's why the recommendation is, that larger discussion. If you want to expand beyond that, then you're going to have to look at either reallocating the Downtown Waterfront Reserve Fund away from, maybe some other things that it's been used for now, and use some of that fund, or increase taxation, or other things. So, but that we feel is more of a budget conversation for the next year's budget cycle, which we're not that far away from now. So we want to deal with this year and then look at that larger question as part of that larger budget deliberations.
Okay, so Councillor Page, question.
I have a number of questions. I felt that it was an important initiative to beautify and bring color to our downtown in the dark nights. And there's a few things I wanted to see if we could try and deal with at the same time to address some lighting concerns I do have downtown. And one of them is, in all respect to the volunteers that went through it, sometimes we have a number of buildings now that have dilapidated lighting running along their ridge lines. And I think building owners are going to need some assistance if we're going to clean that up, at using this as an opportunity to, if we're going to have a forklift or anything else, or if we're going to have a lift out there dealing with the trees, if we can also work with the property owners and bring down the lights that are burnt out on the ridge lines. They're all the way up and down Baker Street, just dead lights.
Yeah, we can have a, yeah.
That's
The-
a really good point.
Yeah, well, that's the point. Oh, sorry, just
You only do good points.
tight lines.
Yeah.
Tight lines. The second thing that I wanted to address within this is, within the downtown, it's important to do that beautification downtown, but is there an opportunity to identify tree candidates in our parks or outside of the downtown along our pedestrian right-of-ways, and look for opportunities to bring some of that festive spirit to the whole city, not just to the downtown core?
Again, I would say that's a discussion in
Point two.
budget, whether you want to expand. Like I said, what we have capacity for is Baker Street, Vernon, and two side streets. That's what we have now, and if you want to,
I guess my direction or my request to staff would be to identify some candidates elsewhere within the city, some one-offs that could be done within parks or within major corridors coming into the downtown that would add some points of interest to the rest of the city.
That might be a good question. Festive type of. Okay, so hang
Yeah,
on a
no, I
second.
know.
You've heard that, Kevin, right?
yep.
Okay, so you're okay with that?
Okay, I had one more.
One more, go ahead, and then.
I'm sorry, I like lighting.
Most lighting.
I like good lighting.
Yeah, okay.
I like tasteful lighting.
Let's not go there.
We aren't. It's not one of the questions. So, on the 400 and 500 block, I don't know if you're looking for direction from us for prioritization, but the Vernon Street one,
No,
coming in
not
from the-
tonight. That's why we're recommending that
Okay.
goes to the larger budget discussion.
not for Vernon, okay. Because what I want to put on there is the discussion about lighting up the cenotaph that is on the boulevard in front of the Hume, because that is clearly, to my eye, a former street light.
All right, it is, actually, you're right.
And
That's
I'm
the
sure
John Hewson-
sure Proclamation was,
John Hewson Monument. There's actually,
That's-
we did have a conversation about Kevin about that being moved where it's more prominent in the community, so that might be in the works as well, so.
okay, that's it.
There was some talk about that over the years, to move it from the boulevard where nobody gets a chance to even know whose name is on it, let alone.
MOT would allow a lighting of where that is coming into an intersection where it is now, but
Okay, so good point, and we'll follow up on that, so Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to point out that we are within the recommendation, there's two, and the second part is that the expansion of decorative lighting to other blocks be referred to the 2024 financial plan, so that's where your wayfinding trees can be included.
Awesome,
So,
thanks.
yeah,
So that's number
won't be
one.
this year.
With a mover and a seconder for number one, but we can include them if you wish. Councillor Morrison, you have something to?
No, I was gonna move it because I didn't think it had been moved yet.
Carried. On number two, the extension of the decorative lighting to other blocks be referred to the
Move.
20.
Second.
Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Renwick. All in favour? Thank you very much. All right, now the fun really begins. Plastic-free month.
So enthusiastic.
On July the 8th, 2019, Council passed a resolution to declare October to be plastic-free month and directed staff to take action to advance to promote the campaign with the Chamber of Commerce. Staff has met with the Chamber to come up with a plan to implement plastic-free month and is providing this update to Council for information. I'll be in Ireland that month, isn't that not a coincidence?
be plastic free.
To be plastic-free. And if we have a mover and a seconder, I'll read it out. Councillor Woodward and Councillor Morrison, that staff plan regarding the implementation of the plastic-free month for October 2019 be received for information. It's all good? All in favour? Carried, thanks very much. So everybody's happy with what's been put forward, good.
Yeah, that's good.
Reports.
It does look good. Looks like a good plan.
Okay, financial department reports and building permit reports. And you can see for it, Colin, is there anything you wanted to highlight here?
Move receipt of reports.
Second it.
Receive the reports. Let me see, is Georama Growers on here anywhere? Let me see. G, D, F, G, yeah, they're on there.
Look how many people.
Hey, we get darn good service from you. Thank you very much. We'll start doing that here.
Spending a lot of money with grandma.
All right. So how about drop design? Anything in them on here? Okay, anything you wanted to mention there, Colin, at all? Nope. Nothing, okay, and building permit reports are also on there. If council wanted to touch on those, you're okay with everything? Action items is next. We'll remove receipt of both reports if that's okay.
Yep.
So here's the
receipt.
famous action items, folks, that we get, and as you can see, there's a lot of stuff on people's plates right now, and we just threw more on it tonight. But there is a schedule of events here that should see us through the end of some of these. Anything you wanted to
Move
mention?
receipt.
Move receipt from Councillor Morrison of action items and reports, okay?
That's fine.
Seconder?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Renwick, all in favor? Carried. All right. Items from in camera, we had one, I think.
Yes.
Janice, did you want to?
Just the
Councillor
release of the, a new member joining the library. Perhaps Keith would like to do that. Sorry, Councillor Page.
Yeah, so we have brought on Dale Butterfield to the library board in this last term here, and Dale comes with a wealth of experience from the city and travels extensively with his band and has a deep passion for libraries in general and the services they provide, and is well connected with the tech community. So the library board is happy to welcome him to our board, and I would put it out that the library board is still searching for 3 other board members. So anyone else who has a passion for books, community, and the varying changes that are happening in libraries, I would by all means ask them to come and put an application in.
Thank you. And Bill, maybe you'll throw that in one of your reports. Yes, hey, and guess what? Guess what? You can put it in the Valley Voice as well, because we go all the way up to
Actually,
3 more members needed, right?
well, especially from the rural areas, the
from rural.
board is offering out to offer liaisons to the Area E and Area F.
So Timothy, on your way home tonight, paint it on the side of your car.
I thought,
Library board
Area
members
H.
needed.
I thought you were inviting Bill to be on the board.
Defined area.
Okay, thank you very much.
Find area.
Okay, next, and every bit as important as everything else we've done to date, and an area that we definitely need to deal with, and that's the Nelson Airport Operations and Regulation Review. And I'm hoping that everybody read through this. I did, and I found it very interesting. And a few things for sure that we need to jump on sooner rather than later that came out in this report. So I'll leave it there for council if you want to adopt the report as presented, or you want to make any suggestions as to how we would accommodate some of the recommendations in here. Forward, but you're welcome to. Councillor,
Yeah, this is just releasing it.
Yeah.
Just releasing it. Just
No, that's all.
information.
Yeah.
so you're okay with that?
Yeah.
So it's for release to the public, and we'll be contacting the relevant folks involved in this to see what our next steps are, whether we have a short, medium, and long-term plan for the airport. Anyone that hasn't received a copy, contact Sarah or Kevin, and we'll be more than happy to furnish it. So you want to move receipt, Council?
Yep.
Okay with that? Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Page. All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. Okay, boys, that was not much excitement there, was there? No. Yeah, though, anyway, regardless.
Yep.
All right, motion to adjourn. Councillor Woodward, Councillor Renwick, all in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. Thank you.